Hello, everyone. May not sound like it, but I'm pretty fired up. So if you're new, right, I would enjoy that you give this a chance because it's like nothing you've ever seen, right? And instead of it being an edit of the same bullshit, right, the shit's live, unprepared. And the idea is that you do these 18 breaths of Qigong standing meditation with me and then listen, right? And it works great with a workout, right? So at the bottom of the videos list is the instruction videos on how to do Qigong, right? But I usually give a little one for each, right? It is standing in the traditional horse stance, which is shoulder width. Your feet are shoulder width. You bend your knees to obscure your toes, right? And you don't collapse in and you don't go wide. Right? It's right over. You turn your hips under by pushing your lumbar out, right? So it's not flexing. It's just trying to straighten the spine. Right? The only engaged muscles are, well, it's obvious, right? It's here, right? And here. Right? But it's not like a flex active, right? It's a positional. So you hold the position. Arms in front of the navel. Spine as straight as possible. Hips turned under. That allows your spine to straighten. Right? And we do 3 breaths per position. And so the first is here in front of the navel, and you hold your arms like you're hugging a tree. And then you breathe in. Ideally, it's the yogic breath. So for your volume of lungs, the intake from the stomach, right, to fill slowly and silently. And that's not always possible. Switch to facing outwards with the hands. And then in front of the heart, second position. Same thing with the arms. The final position is above shoulders, hands in front of the third eye, shoulders down, arms still in a bow. Okay. Sorry if you could hear the dryer. So if you have an injury, don't force it, right? I think you could see that maybe I'm doing that a little with my shoulder, but it's such an old injury that it requires this, it needs it. I don't know what's wrong, why it gets worse, I have my theories, right? There is external factors. Right? The external has its effect on the body, right? Because the body is a living entity, right? That requires a flow of energy, right? I think ideally we wouldn't require like this, the burning of carbon, the oxidization of carbon or whatever, in order to have our cells to have the energy they require. However, as it's irrelevant because no matter how we get our energy, the flow is required for maintenance. Right, the passage of moment to moment, right, can't be a static situation with the body. So it's very important, right? This is what I talk about. It's very fucking important. It's very important to maintain that flow, right, without any blockages. And Qigong does that, right? And in addition, right, so I don't like to divide the mind and the body, I think that was whatever, at the very least, a mistake to do such a thing, because the mind is part of the body, right? It's part of it. It's not separate. And so the maintenance of the body is the maintenance of the mind, right? And especially, right, with this perception, this wide view perception that is required, which is whole perception. And the widest view possible, right, is the objective view. Is that not right? Isn't that the objective, is to be objective? meta objective, right? So that right there shows, right, that it's objectivity is impossible because if you set your intention to be objective, right, then you've already been subjective, right? Because you've individualized it, right? Objectivity is to remove the glasses of the individual, to remove the individual entirely, right? And we find that with the observer effect, that's not possible to do if you're gonna make a measurement. Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me? The removal of the individual, right, can only happen, right, without the will of the individual, right? Once you exercise your will, you collapse the wave function, right? So it's no longer superposition, right? It is now a hard wave, or, an item, something, right? And whenever you do that, right, like for the observer effect itself, once you observe one thing, then the other thing that is supposed to be predictable from that observation is unknowable, right? Which is the uncertainty principle, right? You can't know the position and the velocity, right, of a particle at the same time. You have to choose one or the other. And when you choose one, the other becomes infinitely unknowable. So that's, the collapsing of the wave function, right? It's the diminishment, right? It is the removal of balance and insertion of scales, right, into the physical. Insertion of scales into the physical. And so it's like it makes a disturbance, right, in the physical, because everything is waves, right? It makes a disturbance. And so in our consciousness itself, there is a substrate in which waves take place, right? And it is the waves of thought. You've heard of this concept of the egregore, right? Where it's like a thought pattern or a concept becomes like its own entity. It's its own wave, so to speak. But the point I'm making is that our purpose is to embellish the cosmos, right? Which is to be creative. And it's much more poignant in this level of the reality, right? This dimension, because it's hands-on, right? And perhaps, in the higher dimensions, right, where the physical is less, right, or the division is less pronounced, right, between things, right, at a higher vibration, where something ends and something else begins is not knowable. It's like it's so in the higher dimensions, perhaps, right? This is just conjecture. The individual is much more easily relinquished, right? Because you can identify the edge anyway. So yeah, but that, right, so this is our dilemma, right, is that our purpose here, right, is to be creative, right? To embellish the cosmos with novelty, right? Right? But there's a catch, right? If we claim ownership of the output, that is collapsing the wave function, right? And so that is diminishing the original balance, right? Right. The original polarity, the natural polarity, and creating a new polarity, right? That is in the physical. So yeah, this new polarity is then has a new balance of the scales, right? The physical, right, is now in our hands, right? The judgment is now in our hands, right? Because we've taken credit for it, right? And so the balance of the scales becomes something that is artificially managed, you know? And, that leads to what we have now. That's my whole point, right? Is that's the trick. That's what all of the yogis, that's what all of the shamans, right? That's what they all say. The trick is to relinquish your psychological sense of self so that you can operate at your highest potential, right? And your highest potential is not you, right? When you're not there, then it's available, right? But when you're there, you collapse it into this, the mundane, right? So that's what we do as a society, right? Is we've trapped ourselves in the mundane, right? It's another way to put it. Is this matrix, right? Is built in our minds, right? And so we are taught to make these evaluations, these judgments, which run, right, which contribute to the rhythm of our civilization, right, which is based on this incomplete, right, this half the story polarity, right, where balance must be fucking made, and so it's made in a way that is manipulatable, right, so that the system can be managed and adjusted, right, to maintain a status quo, right? So it's like not natural, right? It's artificial management. And so that's the trick, right? In order for us to operate as a collective at our highest potential, right? We have to let go of the taking of the credit for it, of this individuation, this separation, this division. Right? This, it's not how I wanted to take that. I had a better way to say it. As a collective, right? Our objective, right, is to add something novel to the universe, right? That is not fleeting, right? That continues, and that isn't caught in a cycle repetition, right? In a wash cycle where we repeat the cycle continually, right? Revolution. One revolution, right? And we start again. So, right, that's not how it's done, right? And there's a way that we can do it where we can. What I'm saying is this insistence on this division, right? This like, um, I mean, you could take it all the way to the idea that we are playing God, right? So we've taken out the natural rhythm, put in an artificial rhythm that is fucking corrupt, that can be managed, right, by a uh, uh, invisible, silent few, right? And they aren't silent, but they don't talk. But the idea is to maintain this structure, right, so that the power uh, stratification of power remains intact, right? And so that's not the outcome that we want, right? The Great Reset, right, is like fake. Right? It's full Hegelian dialectic, right? It's problem, action, solution, right? Present the problem. Right? You guys all know this. Present the problem, and um, trigger an action, and then offer up a solution, right? And so this is all easily done, right? If you know the tendencies of, or the general fucking uh, average behavior, right? The majority behavior, right, dictates what happens in society, right? So, and it's like, if there's a commonly held belief, right, that the majority holds, right, then one can guarantee that most of those people will behave in a certain way with certain stimulus presented to them. So it's all very predictable. And um, anyway, the collective, right? So it's like, that's the problem. The problem is that that we fail to recognize, or it's the Narcissus fucking myth, right? That's an easy way to put it. Narcissus sees his reflection in the pool of water, and right, the truncated story that we all learn is that he falls in love with himself, right? And so it's misrepresentation of the myth, right? Narcissus represents humanity itself, right, as a general collective, and we've um, glimpsed our own ingenuity and become transfixed by it, right? And so self-congratulatory about our own cleverness, right? And so it leads to this, it's like a chain reaction of one-upsmanship, right? And so this is that trance that Narcissus is in. It's the whole society is in this trance, this fixation with our own fucking ingenuity, right? This transfixed aspect, right? Transfixed, right? We're fixed in a trance, right? And it's the irony, it's maintained by, our technology, right? But our whole fucking purpose is to have this technological know-how, right? Not perhaps, I mean, there's way higher levels, as I've discussed, right? Is that um, there's free fucking energy right fucking now, right? So like, we can use that as a collective, right, to be our most creative, instead of it being suppressed, so that the market can be controlled with this quote fucking diminished supply, right, of uh, toxic um, fossil fuels. So right, the way that we're doing it requires, right, a fucking manipulation of our minds, right, and we're all just falling for it. And so to get out of it, right, we recognize that we need to be at our maximum creative potential, right? And so, how do we do that? Right? This, constant bloodletting in our civilization, right? This sacrifice almost, right, is unnecessary, and it just saps all of our energy, right? So we know that's the wrong way to do it, and so to recognize, right, that as an individual, right, it's just like your output is fucking part of the collective. And I'm not describing socialism. I'm just saying that that's your fucking purpose as an individual. Your gifts are for others, right? They're for exchanging with others. And so that's what we're set up to do. But like, stop fucking. If we want to be our most creative, right, as a collective, meaning cooperative, right, it's possible to fucking do this, and it's possible to do it in a way where everyone can contribute, right? And it's not, a free for all Chinese downhill, right? To get to the prize, that may have sounded bad. That that dated myself because that's from Hot Dog, the movie, right? The ski movie. The Chinese downhill is when you go to the top of the mountain and it's a race to the bottom of the mountain, and anything goes, no rules, right? So, right, to be our most productive, right, we remove the external sacrifice that's built into our system. We don't even realize it, right? But it requires death and loss for our current civilization to keep turning, right? It requires it, right? And so, regardless of that, there's a way to that where that all of that wasted energy and life force, right, is put towards the collective creativity, right, so that we can actually move into new territory and avoid this cycle that we are in, right, instead of repeating it. And right now it's like we're in this transition where we either go down the same old road or we decide, right? And so it's not like it has to fucking happen, but it does, right? It does have to happen. And it's as I've described, right? We crystallize a new exchange, right, that is incorruptible. And it doesn't require any software, right, to make it that way. It's just, it's first of all, it's recognition that everyone has something to offer and it's not competition. And that if we waste our energy in competition, right, not to say that competition doesn't have its place, but if we waste our energy in competition, then we diminish our potential output, right? So it's ideas compete, right? Ideas compete and everyone makes a contribution. And so in that way, we can guarantee the maximum input, right? Which will raise the odds of a successful output. And so as you can see, like this whole thing is about what we make, right? Our purpose, right, is to create. But we have to create in a way that is to build in alignment with natural laws, right? With cosmic law, with the natural polarity and the natural rhythm, right? We have to let go of the artificial rhythm that we've set up in our own minds, you know. And when you do that, you're realizing you're letting go of this need to defend one's self and one's identity, right? And so, which both things are dividing, right? Divisive. And so, I like, if you're going to participate, and the idea is that the attraction will be very high because it's fucking bringing, right, the means of production back to the people, right? And so it gives back our nature to us, right? So we make all of these production tools available as robots, right? As tools, and we all get to use them either in groups, larger collectives, and orchestrated fucking engineering projects, and also as individuals in small groups and functional teams. Get to fucking use the manufacturing fucking tools, right? The robots don't put us out of work, right? Now it's much easier to fucking make shit, right? So sky's the limit on ideas, right? And so we can build an interface that manages the input of ideas and the feedback on those ideas, you know, for existing technology and potentially new technology, right? So that we can actually move towards, you know, a solution, right? That isn't fucking this problem action solution thing that they got for us, right? This offer that they're presenting to us. Move towards a solution that is that is, you know, the ideal outcome, right? So it's possible, right, to solve these manufacturing problems, right, which is, right, arguably what's put us in this tricky position or perceived tricky position, right? So yeah, it's a simple fucking concept. And it just means that we use our maximum potential, right? And don't diminish it by killing each other. Because really, we are the cells of the body of society, right? We are specialists, right? There are organs of society, right, that are necessary, right? For example, right, transportation infrastructure. Come on now, right? That's the old fucking argument. It's like, oh, you don't want to pay taxes? Well, what about motherfucking roads? And it's like, oh, come on, man. This is something we all agree that we need. You know, it doesn't have to be a private endeavor, right? We all subscribe to the necessary aspect of it, right? And so that goes for all of our technology, whether it's general, like infrastructure, or more focus, you know, and you can get all the way down to the individual artist, right? And it's like a fractal. It gets more and more fucking refined out at the edges. But if you zoom in, you'll see that it's the same structure as the whole thing, right? So we recognize that naturally human beings exchange to live, right? Human beings they exchange with each other to live because as a collective we interface with the surroundings, right? The body of society, right? We all can't do the same fucking jobs. That would be silly, right? So, right, over the millennia, we have specialized down, right? And we've occupied portions of the operation of society, right? Those things don't go away, right? We're still a collective. We can't deny that. We exchange with each other, right? And that we're social creatures for one, but, you know, we do it to live, right? That's how we fucking survive. So recognition of that, right? And so then you, right, crystallize the natural exchange, right, that human beings automatically do anyway. We do it by default in this bullshit that we have, right? Right. It's you know, all of the fucking things, the curtailment of our potential, right? We do it in spite of that. We're still doing it, right? Which is this exchange, this sacred exchange, because, right? Being alive is sacred, right? And everything, right? Once you recognize that, then everything is sacred, you know? So, yeah, crystallize the sacred exchange of value between human beings, crystallize the natural, right, exchange that is free of this, you know, curtailment or this yoke, right, that extracts our life's blood from us, right? So obvious that it's slavery. So that goes against our nature, right? We're not supposed to be. We're already free, right? We're already free. So we have the freedom to decide, right? That it would be easy enough to create the seed of this network of exchange that is free from any curtailment or government, right? Governor, as in a, you know, and you know, governor on an engine, right? On a semi or whatever, or a Ryder truck that diminishes its potential output, right? So, you know, I just keep showing up with this, and at some point, you know, it'll be awesome, right? Um, to get this thing off the ground, right? Because, right, to crystallize the network, right, we need a seed, right? And kind of like an agitation, right? And so we need to begin something. And I think it, you know, it requires the interface for one, and two, a recognition that it's the exchange. So it's like product, right? There needs to be an initial product in which we operate this method on, which is this collective real time feedback, right, from the collective, as opposed to the way it is now, where they release products that some product designer has designed, right, and they've sent it through focus groups, but focus groups, right, it's a joke, fucking joke. But basically, a product gets out into the market, and then people fucking say, "Look, about this product, there's some things that are good, but mostly this, and this sucks," and it ends up being right because it's a very common fucking response of all the people who purchase the product. So basically they're getting user feedback after they've already sold, right? Right. So anyway, it's like, you know, people are just designed to be consumers and not designers, even though, right, in our society, most people are just consumers and not realizing by their purchasing habits they're designing fucking the next generation of products, but they're having to pay to do it. So the idea is, right, that you subscribe to, right, the tools that you are interested in and need. And there's common tools that everyone fucking needs, right? And I'll tell you one thing about manufacturing right now is like the tiered products, right? Cutlery, for example, right? Everyone needs that shit. Everyone's got to have it, but there's tiered products, right? And so the bottom tier is shit. It's fucking absolute shit. Such a waste of material, right? So the idea is that everything is top tier, right? And so how do you imagine how that's possible? How can you imagine it? Right? Everything's manufactured fucking to its best possible fucking quality, right? And it's all recoverable. Just one idea of the thing. So, but first, right, crystallize the network and build the interface, right? the only way out is through, right? So we use the technology, we create a value source that is so attractive that it creates this, you know, I mean, it's basically how the tipping point happens, right? Tipping point. And you know, to think that somehow it would be squashed or put down, right, because of a threat that it presents, right, is to diminish the, you know, the idea of it, right? There, it will. The concept behind it is so fucking. Once it's perceived, right, the value is unassailable, right? And so it it will overcome this like perceived fucking inertia, right? And the opposition will be powerless, right? Because they are powerless without us. They, right? So we just do it. We just do it. And so it begins in my mind, right? And tell me, right, what you think. As a simple fucking application that shows how the human network is structured, right? All right, y'all. Love. And until next time, stay tuned.